Okay. Hi, everybody. Let's ask everyone to mute themselves.
Hi.
I guess I'll do it for you.
Okay, how are you doing? Good. Everybody else too in the family?
Let me just see how I do that. I'll figure it out soon.
Oh, wow.
Okay. There we go. Okay. I hope everyone had a beautiful Chag. And we're just going to spend a few minutes on Rabbi Yehuda Halevi's analysis in the Kuzari of Sefer Yetzirah. And then we're going to go on to I think, a very important and relevant idea from the Parsha. The first thing that I wanted to mention is that in going through some of the text of the Kuzari, I recognize that it's necessary for us to do a little skipping of the text from this point forward, because Sefer Yetzirah is very esoteric. So I'm going to share with you just one more paragraph. I'm going to show you a chart, which is contained in the text. And then we're going to skip around, okay? So where we left off last time is on page 457 in the Feldheim Kuzari. We're in the fourth essay. And we mentioned that the whole theme of the book of creation, which is what Rabbi Yehuda Halevi is describing now, and just to get our bearings, the reason why Rabbi Yehuda Halevi feels that the book of creation is such an important text is because he feels that Judaism is a self-contained unit of information that provides knowledge of everything that you need to know. And so, hello, welcome back. Yeah. So what he's trying to accomplish is to completely separate the need for a Jew to reference outside information in order to be able to understand Hashem's world. And I think that there's a certain nobility in that endeavor, in that when you're very proud of your tradition and you feel that the Torah contains everything, which our tradition says that it does. Our tradition tells us that if you analyze the Torah text carefully enough and you read it with this discriminating eyes and you delve deeper than just the surface reading, the Torah is really the blueprint for the entire universe. And so it therefore must contain all the information, including the molecules and the cells and the atoms and the subatomic particles and quantum physics and all of the things that we've discovered since the giving of the Torah. All of that has to be somehow contained within the Torah text itself. The more you pour down deeply into it, accompanied by an oral tradition. And this, for Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, is the solution to why or how a Jew doesn't need to rely on the external sciences and the philosophies of the world around him in order to be able to obtain ultimate knowledge of everything. The Rambam, as we know, took a completely different approach, and his approach was that everything that is true, that is contained within secular philosophy, is really originally part of our tradition, just that we forgot it, we lost it because we went into exile. And as a result, we have to retrieve what was originally ours from external sources. It's almost like, you have a family heirloom, and then you discover that it's somewhere in a museum. So you have to retrieve it from the museum, but you have to basically connect it back to your family. That's the Rambam's approach. Rabbi Yehuda Halevi does not agree with that approach. He feels that there are too many flaws in the philosophy of his time to suggest that it contains absolutely true information that was originally ours. he does concede that many of the truths that you find in philosophy were originally transcribed from King Solomon's court. He does make a point of saying that earlier in the Sefer. But he still feels that if you're looking for a system that presents an explanation for all that exists and how everything emanated from God, the best model is the traditional model that you can find in Jewish texts, not that you find in secular texts. And that's the reason why he presents us with Sefer Yetzirah, because Sefer Yetzirah, up to his time when he's living, which is in the 12th century, is the authoritative text within Jewish literature that offers an explanation of how everything came into existence and how Hashem made the world from his unitary essence into the multitudinous and diversified and variegated world in which we live. Okay? So the approach of Sefer Yetzirah is to say that Hashem used the 22 letters of the alphabet, of the Aleph Bet, and the 10 celestial spheres, and created these pathways from himself down to our world using these 32 pathways. And the number 32 is 22 plus 10. It's the word lev, which is heart. And so there are no coincidences. Then he breaks down the letters of the alphabet into 3 groups. And we had just started the first group, which was known as the 3 mothers. And it refers to the letters Aleph, Mem, and Shin. That's in subparagraph 14. It is a great, amazing, and hidden mystery that from these letters emerge the words Avir, Aleph, for wind, Mayim, which is water, and Aish, the Shin of Aish, which is fire. Everything else is created from these basic elements. What's the 4th element that's missing? Which element is missing? Earth. And so why is Earth missing? Because probably Earth, the belief is a lower type of element. It's the basest element, and it therefore must be an indirect product of these 3. Okay? Now, the author of Sefer Yetzirah made an arrangement of these letters that aligns with an arrangement of the 3 systems. Now, what 3 systems is Sefer Yetzirah referring to? So the 3 systems are called Olam, Nefesh, and Shana. Now, these are terms that are contained in a lot of Hasidic writings as well, based on Sefer Yetzirah. I don't know if if any of you have a background in this area, but Olam, Nefesh, and Shana are terms that are used to describe time, space, and the human soul. And what do we mean by that? There are 3 planes of reality. There's Olam, which represents all of space, the infinite space of our world and the celestial realm and all of the universe as we know it. Then there's time, which is and that's represented by the word Olam. Okay, the word Olam means all of reality, all of physical reality. Shana, what does the word Shana mean? Year, but it is representative of time, which is the other realm. It's the 4th dimension, as scientists call it, 4th dimension of reality. And then you have the 3rd system, which is the human soul, called Nefesh. In other words, man was created not just as one of God's many creations, but rather man is a microcosm of everything that exists in the macro universe, both in the Olam and in the Shana. so that if you were to examine the human being and the human body, you would be able to find a perfect correspondence between the entire universe and time and all of time. So the human existence has a perfect, a direct correspondence to those other two realms. And all three of these realms correspond to the 32 pathways, and specifically to the 22 letters of the Aleph Bet. Okay? So we're not going to delve more deeply into this, other than I'm going to show you the charts that are contained in Sefer Yetzirah. When I was translating the Kuzari, these charts were found in rudimentary form in 19th century texts, because publishing skills were not able to represent these things that well in a perfect table using a word processor. So one of the things that I'm happy that I was able to accomplish in translating the Kuzari was to reproduce these charts. So here you go, and I'm just going to share it on my screen, and you have it on your screen up here. So you have three groups of letters: the three mothers, the 7 doubles, and the 12 regulars. Okay, and those, by the way, are in your text on page 458, 459, and 460. Okay, and Feldheim had a bit of a trouble doing things sideways, but they finally figured it out. Took us a little time to figure out how to do it, but we did it. Okay, so what you see here is a table. You see the three primary letters, Aleph, Mem, and Shin. By the way, Sefer Yetzirah doesn't explain why these are called the three mothers, but they have certainly Aleph, we understand. But why Mem and Shin? It's not really clear to me, and it's not really carefully explained in Sefer Yetzirah. But these letters represent the three primary letters. And you have on the side, you have Olam, Nefesh, and Shana. So if you look at Olam, which represents the physical universe, you have the three primary elements: air, water, and fire. If you look at the soul, which is that which is contained within man, you have the chest, the stomach, and the head. Okay? And if you look at time, you have things that are subject to change, which are temperance, which means an even balance between hot and cold. You have cold and you have heat. Okay? If you look at the next chart, you have the 7 doubles. What are the 7 doubles? So they are the letters Bet, Gimel, Dalid, Kaf, Pei, Resh, and Taf. When you were in school, did they ever teach you about Beged Kefet? Did you ever? What is Beged Kefet, Shireen? Yes, exactly. All of those letters are what we would call double letters. They skipped Resh. So you know what we mean when we say that it has the dot? Each one of the Beged Kefet letters, there are 6 letters in modern Hebrew that can sometimes get the dagesh and sometimes do not get the dagesh. And when we talk about dagesh, we're talking about a dagesh kal, not a dagesh chazak, which we're not going to get into right now, but they have dual pronunciations: bet and vet, kaf and chaf, pei and fei, taf and, in Ashkenazis we say saf, right? Okay. Gimel, Gimel, Dalid, Valid. You don't know this?
No.
Oh. Well, that's understandable because you're not Yemenites. But you see, there are certain parts of our tradition, even in pronunciation of our letters, that we've lost. But these 6 letters all have dual pronunciations. And it's clear that the suf is not suf. It's more like thuf, a soft th. And that's when you listen to a Yemenite read the Torah, you understand. So Dalid, it has the hard th, Dalid, and Taf has Thuf. And that's So for example, there's one word that I read like a Yemenite when I'm davening. Well, the word is mitukan, which is in the blessings of Kriya Shema. Why do I not pronounce it like an Ashkenazi Jew? Because if you pronounce it like an Ashkenazi Jew, you say that the words of God are misukan. What does misukan mean? Dangerous. That's a real misnomer, right? Yeah. So I say mithukan because, and that's just one of my things that I picked up from one of my teachers over the years. But so you see that these all are the double letters, and the double letters, they add the letter resh. So in the footnote in the text of the Kuzari itself,
Sorry, what page is it?
it's on page 459 in the Kuzari. So if you look at footnote number 258, the 7 entries for universe are the names of the 7, footnote 259. Most Hebrew grammar texts do not include the resh as one of the double letters. The resh, however, and in modern Hebrew, it never gets a dagesh. But there are 2 places in Tanakh where I think it's only 2. I think the word is hare'ima in Sefer Shmuel is one of them. And you can do your own research if you'd like to look it up. It rarely gets a dagesh in biblical text. And we don't know what the variant pronunciation is. I certainly don't know what it is. And I'm not sure, maybe Yemenites do know what it is, I don't know. So, Beged Kefret, 7 double letters. So let's see what they correspond to in the 3 systems, Olam, Nefesh, and Shana. In the universe, these 7 letters correspond to the 7 primary celestial spheres. We mentioned before that there are 10, but these are 7 planetary spheres, 7 planetary celestial bodies. They are Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, the Sun, Venus, Mercury, and the Moon. These represent celestial bodies where the ancient system was of the belief that these form concentric spheres around the planet Earth, where Saturn is the outermost and the Moon is the innermost planetary body, okay? Within the human body, within the soul, represents these 7 traits, represent 7 traits of the human being, not the body itself. So it represents wisdom, wealth, rulership, life, grace, progeny, and peace. Those are 7 sort of human attributes, I guess, that we would aspire towards attaining in a human life. And in time, they correspond to the 7 days of the week: Shabbos, Thursday, Tuesday, Sunday, Friday, Wednesday, and Monday. Now, don't ask me why they're ordered in that way. I don't know. It's very confusing, and it doesn't really make any logical sense, but they correspond to various letters, the days of the week, and equally correspond to 7 aspirations of the human soul and the 7 celestial spheres, the planetary spheres. And then finally, we go to the 12 regulars, just after you subtract the 7 and the 4, you're left, the 7 and the 3 rather, you're left with 12 regular letters, which are Hey, Vav, Zayin, Ches, Tes, Yud, Lamed, Nun, Samech, Ayin, Tzadi, and Kuf. Okay, so in the universe, these are 12 that correspond to the 12 signs of the zodiac: Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces, which all have a Hebrew name, by the way. So the 12 signs of the zodiac is not just it's not just a secular idea, but it's a mazel, what we call a mazal. The Mem was one of the 3 mothers, if you remember, right? Okay. Okay, so you can divide the star system into 12 different sectors or 12 different configurations depending upon the time of year, and that's in the universe. In the human being, it's the 12 different primary organs which are responsible for different things that are contained within a human being, either sensory organs or organs that help a human being function within humanity. So you have the organ of sight that refers not only to the eyes, but also to the inner organ, according to Greek philosophy, which connects with the organ of sight with the eyes. The organ of hearing, the organ of smelling, the organ of speech, the organ of tasting, the organ of intercourse, the organ of action, the organ of motion, the organ of thought, the organ of anger, the organ of laughter, and the organ of sleep. And finally, having to do with time, you have the system of 12 corresponding to the 12 months of the year. Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz, Av, Elul, Tishrei, Mar Cheshvan, Kislev, Teves, Shvat, and Adar. So essentially, what Sefer Yetzirah does is that it demonstrates how the 22 letters of the alphabet correspond to all of reality, and all of reality is divided into three systems. Olam, physical universe, Nefesh, the human soul, and Shana, things that are subject to change in time. Okay? So that's all we're going to look at for today. And we're going to skip. From here at this point, we're going to skip a little bit down. The only other thing that I wanted to introduce to you is if you want to skip to paragraph 30, because it gets very technical. It's on page 465. And Reb Yehuda Halevi says, the divine wisdom in all of these things is the same. The wisdom within the celestial bodies is no greater than the wisdom contained in the smallest of living creatures. So an ant and the planet Jupiter are essentially the same as far as being imbued with divinity and divine wisdom. The only reason the celestial bodies are loftier is because they are made of purer matter, which because of its purity lasts longer. Thus, only God himself can destroy these bodies. Living creatures, on the other hand, are composed of matter that receives ever-changing forms. It is continually introduced to opposing forces, such as cold and heat. And so, again, everything emanates from a unitary God, and it spreads out into different facets of that unity when we look at the universe writ large. This is not only an endeavor of Sefer Yetzirah, but there was a corresponding endeavor in the world of philosophy called Neoplatonism, and it also manifests itself in the Zohar, where the effort is made to try and connect all of the diversity that we find in the world to the unity of the Ribbono Shalom. And that's really what is being described in Sefer Yetzirah. Okay? So we're going to hold it here for today, just in time for Rachel to learn about the Parsha. Okay? So let's hold it here, and Amir Tzashem will move beyond. Well, I may just extract one or two more points from Sefer Yetzirah, and then we'll move on to the next topic. Okay, so let's go on to our Parsha for today. What does the word Zeitgeist mean? Anyone want to translate that word? Yes.
Spirit of the world.
The spirit of the world, the cultural attitude or prevailing feelings within a society or a culture at any given time, the moral value and so forth. And I think that, now that we've just experienced, or at least if you're American, you've even more experienced it, a dramatic change in political leadership, I think that it also represents a changing zeitgeist within society. And I want to reflect upon that for just a moment and see how this connects with something in our parsha that I think is quite important. We're going to learn a piece from Rav Yaakov Leiner, who's a very deep thinker, who thinks about these things like the Zeitgeist of the times. And so I hope that you'll enjoy this piece. It's going on a pasuk which describes Avraham acting as the great defender of the people of Sodom. And the premise that Rav Leiner takes in this line of thinking that he's going to present in this short piece is, why would a tzaddik like Avraham want to defend the people of Sodom, when at the end of the day, the people of Sodom represent the antithesis of what Avraham is all about? Avraham is all about chesed. He's all about kindness. He's all about presenting and helping and bringing people in and making sure that everyone is fed and everyone is clothed and everyone is cared for. And the people of Sodom seem to represent the exact opposite of that, right? So this is what he's going to try to explain to us. He says, Ha'inyan. So just to explain this idea, Sha'avraham Avinu, alav hashalom, hiftzir batefila kol kach avor haSedomiyim. He says the reason why Avraham interceded so strongly on behalf of the Sodomites, shahayu hahefech legamre mimidato midat hachesed. They were the diametric opposite of everything that he stood for, which was chesed. Shahaya notein mituvo l'chol asher ba'elav. Because instead of being miserly like the people of Sodom, Avraham shared everything he had with everybody. Vehem lo ratzu litein mishalahem klum, rak amru sheli sheli. They didn't want to share everything that they had. They had rather said, what's mine is mine. Now, where does that term sheli sheli come from? Exactly. I thought it was from Cafe Shali, but I guess it's not. No? Okay, so it's Shali Shali, right? So go ahead. I'm going to quote for you the Mishnah. Just give me 1 second. Because I should have put it in the handout.
But that's not even the worst madrega, Shali.
Well, you're right. So the Mishnah says that if you say what's mine is yours, what's yours is yours, and what's mine is yours, that's a pious person. That's a saintly person. If you say what's mine is mine and what's yours is yours, so what does the Mishnah say? Zu midah benonit. This is temperate. This is not truly evil, and it's not truly good either. But the yesh omrim zu midat Sodom. And some say that it is to be like a sodomite. So you have this dispute in the Mishnah itself, whether you're a bad person if you harbor that feeling, or whether you're just an average person who feels what's mine is mine and what's yours is yours.
Is this from Pirkei Avos?
This is from Pirkei Avos, the 5th chapter of Pirkei Avos. Yes. Sorry again?
It's saying there's no neutrality. You're either right or wrong. You can't be just. But there's no middle ground.
Well, one opinion is there's middle ground. One opinion is that there's nothing wrong. You're not a tzaddik if you have that attitude, because it demonstrates that you basically feel that what's mine is mine, and I don't feel that I should have to support you. Because just like I worked hard to get what's mine, you work hard to get what's yours. Okay? But some say that that's to be like a sodomite, to not share of your blessings with others. Now, they can't both be true. So how do you understand this Mishnah? If I was to poll everyone in this room and was to ask you, Shali Shali, Vishalach Shalach, is that neutral or is it bad? What would you say?
Not good.
You'd say it's not good.
No.
Okay. Is that because you come from originally you were part of a communist country, or
No, not at all.
No.
No, not at all. Not because of this. No.
But so what would your argument be?
A person shares, a person gives. You have to train yourself to be a giver.
You have to be a giver like Avraham. Exactly. So how can the Mishnah equivocate and say that this is a neutral position? It's neither good nor bad. And some say it's really bad, like you're a sodomite. I mean, I agree with you, what you just said. I was just kidding around. But how can the Mishnah suggest that it's a neutral thing?
The whole justice system is based on that. People,
Justice.
they're allowed to keep what belongs to them, and they're not supposed to take anything that belongs to someone else. That's considered just.
Okay, so like Rachel says, it's considered just. I mean, can you imagine if I work for a whole year to earn my salary, and then at the end of the year, the government comes to me and says, you have to relinquish 90% of your salary. I think today, what is it, like 60% of your salary? 65% of your salary? So at what point do we say that shali v'shalach shalach is a good thing? And at what point do we say it's a bad thing? It seems to be somewhat subjective, depending upon, you cannot be absolute about it. If you're absolute about it and say that you never can say shali shalach, what's mine is yours, so then that's a bad thing. But should there not be situations when it's proper to stick with justice and say shali v'shalach shalach? Look, don't be on the dole. I'm not here to support the world who wants to come into my country and to get everything for free, right? Right? Are you a Trumper or are you a Democrat, right? Yeah, so like, what is this all about, right? How do we make sense of the changing zeitgeist? Okay, achein. So this is what Rav Leiner is getting to. Achein mipnei she'elu hakochot nitkenu bizar'o v'nichlalu b'kedusha, lachein haya bo ratzon lihitpalel aleihem. Avraham realized that this evil attitude of Sodom, shali, the shalach, would at some point in the future be rectified for holy purposes within Avraham's progeny. He therefore wanted to pray on their behalf. In other words, what the Sodomites have done is they have taken an attribute which does have potential applications for the good, and they have used it for the bad. But it doesn't mean that their entire system is completely evil. It means that they have used a system which at sometimes can be applied for the good and sometimes can be applied for the bad, and have gone overboard on the side of bad. But that doesn't mean that they're not worthy of prayer. Ki be'emet minhag Hashem yitbarach ba'olam hazeh shechafetz b'midat Avraham. In most circumstances, God really desires the midah of Avraham, which is to be giving of everything that you have, share everything that you have, be the kind person who opens up his home and shares of himself completely. B'chutz lo yalin ger v'liftoach dalto la'oreach. Let no stranger stand outside. Open the door for the guest. V'shelo limnoa bar mililmod mililamed l'chol mi sheyavo lebeit hamidrash lahamid talmidim harbei. And let no one be barred from entering the study hall, which is a reference to a story in the Talmud where one sage wanted to restrict who was going to come into the yeshiva. And another sage says, no, we have to open up the yeshiva to anyone who wants to study Torah, which is an ongoing controversy. Like when you start a yeshiva, do you make it exclusive or do you make it inclusive, right? Right? So the midah of Avraham is the desirable midah to Hashem, okay? The Yitzchak Avinu, ruach acheret hayitabo. But Yitzchak was different. And when we learn about the life of Yitzchak, we're going to discover that he is not described in the same way that Avraham is, the man who opens up his tent and welcomes everybody in. Okay, so he says, "Shekol mi she'ein tocho kibaro al yikanes lebeit hamidrash." Yitzchak was not open to letting everybody in. He had certain standards. And like the Talmud says about the Rabbi Gamliel, who restricted entry into the study hall, you had to pass an entrance exam. Yitzchak was that way as well. I need to know that you're sincere. I'm not interested in doing kiruv. I'm interested in letting people come who are sincere and good and already developed. V'haya mekametz mililmod im kol asher yavo elav rak im yihiyeh tocho kivaro. He didn't indiscriminately let everyone come in, but he had certain standards, and he held people to those standards. And if you weren't willing to rise to those standards, he wouldn't welcome you into his tent. And he did keep it. I remember once talking about this one Shabbos Hagadol in a drasha. And I said, can you imagine the Pesach Seder that Avraham must have had versus the Pesach Seder of Yitzchak? Yitzchak's Pesach Seder had his family, maybe one or two guests, because he wanted to have a sublime holy experience of feeling God's presence at a table where words of Torah would be exchanged. And Avraham's Pesach Seder was comprised of all manner of heathens who would come in. He would wash their feet to make sure they weren't dragging in the dust of idolatry with them into his tent. But then he would let in the guy who has 7 wives and one of them is a goat. And he would say, come in and join and learn and feel feel what I'm feeling. And these people would be scratching their head and talking about their own gods. And Avram said, yes, we'll talk about your gods, but let's first talk about my God. And then the conversation would invariably wander off to something completely not germane to Torah and mitzvot. But Avram would say, that's a fascinating topic, and let's talk about it. But let's also talk about the God of Israel, the God is who is above all of that. And that's how he would engage his guests. So whose Seder table would you rather be at? And there's a part of us that says, wow, Avraham's Seder must have been amazing. I related how in the past, my wife and I have had some really wild Pesach Seders, where we had non-Jews at our Seder, where we had a lesbian couple at our Seder, and the color of the hair and the piercings and all of these very unusual people that would be at our Pesach Seder. And for some people, that's a sublime holy experience. And for other people, this is crazy. I want to hear some good Divrei Torah. So which one do you choose? Do you choose the table of Avraham, or do you choose the table of Yitzchak? Avraham lets everybody in, because how else will you be exposed to the greatness of Judaism? And Yitzchak says, no, we've got to preserve the holiness. We have standards. Okay, so which one is yours? Which table do you choose?
Table for about half an hour. Okay. Yeah, let's have a regular Seder.
So what you're essentially suggesting is that there's a place for both.
We've got 2 Seders.
Yeah, you got that. Well, I think Avraham was in Eretz Yisrael, so we only had one Seder. But he says, V'chas v'shalom lachshov al Yitzchak Avinu olav hashalom beno shel Avram Avinu shenikra nadiv nedivei amim ne'esafu am Elokei Avraham sha'asa zot mipnei shehaya kamtzan be'emet. God forbid that we should suggest that Avraham's son, Yitzchak, who's known as a generous person, would act this way by barring people from entry because he was miserly in any way. That's not it. אכן שהיה מצמצם את עצמו, שלא להשפיע למקום שאין רצון השם יתברך. To use Rav Leiner's language, he reduced his accessibility because he did not wish to emanate holiness in places where he felt that God would not want his holiness to pervade. V'lazeh nolad Yitzchak me'Avraham lahorot bazeh. But that's why a man like Avraham had a son that is like Yitzchak. One is born from the other. And what does that indicate? Shebe'emet haya b'Yitzchak gam kein midat nidivut mirushat aviv. That Yitzchak also possesses all of those attributes of his father Avraham, of generosity, of kindness, etc. Omnam kol kamtzanuto haita shelo ratza lahashpia lemakom she'ein ratzon Hashem yitbarach. But his attitude was, God, what the product that I am purveying is holiness. I don't want to cheapen the holiness that I possess by distributing it to places where Hashem would not be happy for it to be distributed. And that's the reason why he held back. Not because his nature was to be miserly, but because he felt that when you have something truly special, you can't just throw it everywhere. Okay? Ula atid, and in the future, yitnaheg ha'olam b'midat Yitzchak. And when you think about it, in the future world, in the Messianic age, the world right now operates using the midah of Avraham Avinu. But in the future world, there will be absolute justice, and the world will operate using the midah of Yitzchak. K'di'ita b'shas umachvi lehu Yitzchak HaKadosh Baruch Hu be'einayu. The Gemara therefore says that Yitzchak will be the one to show the world God. U'chedi'ita gamkein b'shas ein mekablim gerim liyamot HaMashiach. And the Talmud also says that in the Messianic age, we will no longer accept converts. What does that mean? It means that in the future, we're not just going to be opening our tents to everybody. There is going to be a withdrawal because it'll be too accessible, too easy. And we want to make sure, shali shali, the shalach shalach, right? Not like Avraham, okay? V'ita gamkein b'shas called tzadik v'tzadik yesh lo mador b'fnei atzmo. And the Talmud also says that in the Messianic age, or maybe this is a reflection of the world to come, every tzaddik will have his own dwelling, his own unique position in relation to Hashem. It's not going to be any more that we all share of ourselves and our holiness with each other. Hainu sha'az yitnaheg ha'olam b'midat shali shali. That means that in the future, the world will work under the principles of what's mine is mine, what's yours is yours. If I worked hard to reach a certain madrega, then that will be my level. If you worked less hard, then that'll be your madrega. Everyone gets what they're entitled to based on the effort that they put in, not based on charity. Okay? Shekol echad yikametz milavater mechelko. That every person in the future world will recognize that it's based that we have to work based on our own level, not based on charity, not based on giving up of what I have. Lachein nasu chein beinei Avram v'yitpalel aleim. So getting back to Avram, that's why Avram davened for the people of Sodom. He saw that they had a certain ethic that while they had converted it to true evil by taking it to the extreme, there is nonetheless a value of after a half an hour sending the goats out of the house and having a serious Seder, right? Okay. Me'achar sha'atida zu hamida letaher bizar'o keshetit kalel b'kedusha. So that at some point, because he knew that his progeny would purify that ethic of shali shali and turn it into something holy. And he says, that's why the destruction of the city of Sodom took place before Yitzchak was born. It's not just that it just happened to be that way. But Yitzchak could only be born after Sodom was destroyed. Bichdei shelo tiyeh lehem achiza b'midat Yitzchak. Because Yitzchak cannot be connected to Sodom in any way. Yitzchak is going to take what Sodom had that was destructive and turn it into something great. Sheyomru gam Yitzchak mitnaheg b'midat shalishli. To not give Sodom the excuse that, look, we're not doing anything different from Yitzchak. So the answer is no. Complete separation between your existence and Yitzchak's existence, no overlap. That is to indicate that their miserliness was pure evil. Umidat Yitzchak mivureret letov mishorish tov, whereas Yitzchak was able to take that attitude and turn it into something good. Ki la'osei ratzon Hashem yitbarach lo haya mekametz kalal. That because what Yitzchak did was discriminating for those who could use his help because they were seeking God properly, he would not be miserly whatsoever. Omnam rak la'atit titnaheg midat Yitzchak achar hashlamat habirurim. But it's only in the future that the world can operate purely on the attribute of Yitzchak, when all impurities have been already filtered and purified. Az yitkayem hakatuv, leiv yodea marat nafsho uvesimchato lo yitarev zar. One of my favorite psukim from Mishlei. The heart knows the bitterness of its experiences, and therefore, when it rejoices, no stranger may mix in. Rabbeinu Bechaya uses this pasuk to introduce the story of Yitro. Why did Moshe send Yitro away before the Jews received the Torah? After all, he was a righteous convert. And the answer is based on this pasuk in Mishlei, because you didn't go through the slavery that we went to. You didn't suffer under the whip that the Jewish people experienced. And therefore, you cannot enjoy the great reward that is being doled out to the Jewish people, partially because we have endured so much suffering over the millennia. That kind of attribute of, no, we're not sharing our goodness with the people who wish to attach themselves to the Jewish people in the Messianic age, that's the midah of Yitzchak. That's not the midah of Avraham. Aval ata ba'olam hazeh, but now that we're in this world, mi sheyitnaheg bezu hamida kofinot al midat Sodom. If he acts that way, shali shali, shalach shalach, and doesn't share, then we say to a person, that's not right. You're acting like a sodomite. Ki la'et ata tzarech ha'adam lihitnaheg rak b'midat hachesed. Because today, in our pre-Messianic age, we have to act like Avraham. We have to be kind. We have to share with people. We have to do kiruv. We have to outreach to those who don't know what a Pesach Seder is and have them at our table, and even at the expense of sharing those sublime divrei Torah that we wish we could if we were all alone, sequestered from the outside world. This world runs on chesed for now. In the future, it'll operate on the midah of Yitzchak, shali shali v'shalach shalach. So the truth is, to answer the question, it all depends on the zeitgeist of the time. In a pre-Messianic age, there has to be more emphasis on chesed. As we get closer to Yemot HaMashiach, the emphasis on shali shali v'shalach shalach becomes stronger and stronger. And we're starting to see this in society. I was just commenting on the tragedy of there's a fellow who's in our shul who travels to different parts of Canada because of his business. And one of his businesses, part of his business is to supply goods to places where indigenous people live. And one of the greatest tragedies of Canada, and it's in the United States as well, is the tragedy of the life of the average indigenous person. Not only did we take their land, but we also took away their humanity and their dignity. So that you go to Manitoba, and you go to the cities in Manitoba where mostly indigenous people live, and you see people just wandering on the streets intoxicated because the government, in its act of, so to speak, penance, is just throwing money at these people without giving them anything to live for. And when you take something which is virtuous like chesed, and you do use it indiscriminately without giving people an incentive to make something of their lives, you are in effect destroying them. So you see how chesed can be used improperly, just like midat Sodom can be used improperly. You know, and this is what's going on in so many countries where people are rising in the streets in great civil unrest, not because they're poor, not because they can't get a job, but because they have nothing to live for. A benevolent government can provide all of the amenities that you need in life to get by. You can have food on your table, you can have a roof over your head, but if you don't have a raison d'etre, if you don't have a reason for living, and that's not something that government can give you, then you have nothing. And you resent the hand that has fed you because you expected that hand to also give you a purpose in existence, and they are not there for that purpose. And sometimes giving without ensuring that someone has found their purpose can actually be more cruel than not giving at all. And so I think what we're seeing within society today is a form of correction, where the powers of republicanism and conservatism are now beginning to prevail. That doesn't mean we're not going to go back to some liberal politician in 10 years from now, but I think it's going to take probably 10 years. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it'll be less time. But the correction is to take all of these programs that opened the border without any limits, just like Abraham's tent. No borders, no limits. Everybody can come in because all human beings are beautiful and special. And then all of a sudden you discover, wait a minute, what about this gang of rapists that's terrorizing our population? What about these drug addicts who are purveying drugs and killing our children with fentanyl? What have we done in our efforts to be Baalei Chesed, to open our tents like Avraham? We've ended up destroying our society. And so that's where the correction comes in. And this is the back and forth, the balance of when is shali mida benonit, a neutral position, and when is it a sodomite position? It has to be properly balanced and calibrated at every juncture within the history of civilization. I guess that's one of the things I wanted to present today. The other part is just a piece from Rav Kook, where he talks about this idea that within every ideology, there is a kernel of goodness that can be harvested. And it's really a very similar idea to what we were talking about. It really just helps us explain why Avraham was passionate about defending the people of Sodom. He saw evil, but he also saw a redeeming ethic within the people of Sodom that would be necessary at some time in the future of human civilization. And Rav Kook says the same thing. He lived during a time in the early 20th century where there was the same kind of turbulence that we're experiencing, the ideological turbulence that we're experiencing today, with the rise of communism, with the rise of the Bolsheviks, and all of these revolutions and all of these new ideas, and the removal of God from the public square, from ideology. It almost seems like at the beginning of every century, man has to go through some kind of turbulent readjustment. It happened. It's like 100 years ago, the same thing was going on, right? And Rav Kook's point that he makes in this little short piece, which we're not going to have time to go into, is that you can, if you're trying to debate someone that they have because you feel they have a flawed ideology, you're not going to be able to convince the person who is your ideological opponent that they're wrong by just pointing out all of the flaws in their thinking. You have to also identify, both for yourself and for your opponent, the validating, redeeming values within their ideology. And if you cannot identify any redeeming value in the ideology of your opponent, you will never be able to engage in a successful debate. You have to be able to say, I see where you're coming from, and there's value to say, like Avraham said, Shali Shalach, what's mine is yours. I think it's a beautiful ideal. If you're living in an Abrahamic era where the goal is to gain as many adherents as necessary as we possibly can to our way of thinking. But we're not living in that time. And when you use that idea, that very good ideology, indiscriminately, to allow people who have not been vetted, to allow people who do not have the same values as we do in a Western civilization into the country, and simply don't have any standards whatsoever, then you're actually being quite destructive in your liberalism. And that's where the balance has to be. You have to sort of validate liberal ideology has value. There's something very virtuous that underlies it all, right? But unfortunately, it doesn't always work in the way that you seek to implement it. It's so fascinating. You look at the media today, especially the legacy media, and it's so messed up. Everything is, the commentators are just, they're not intelligent anymore. They haven't, I'm looking at people who are trying to analyze, like, I specifically make a point of listening to more liberal media outlets after the election was won by Trump, because I want to try and see, like, let's see if we can understand, if they understand what went wrong, and perhaps maybe that there's an adjustment that's necessary. And for most of these ideologues that you hear on the, like on CNN and MSNBC, for most of them, and perhaps CBC as well, although, you know, I don't listen as much to CBC. I guess I'm too American. But for most of these ideologues, these talking heads, we didn't message properly. We didn't appeal enough to this demographic or to that demographic, without even taking a moment of contemplation, of self-reflection, that perhaps we've been mistaken in the way that we're trying to apply a certain ideology. Okay, that's all I wanted to say for today. Any comments from anybody?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Chaya, please.
If going back to the people in Manitoba who are roaming the streets on drugs, like how to apply a better way in our everyday life? The government supposedly does a good thing, but isn't it that a person has a choice, has a Vayera, a free choice?
At some point, if you're born into that system, you no longer have choice. If, you know, you're put in this world, you're dropped from outer space, then maybe you have free will. But if you're an indigenous person born into a family that has been on the dole for generations, I don't see how you break that cycle until you break the system of government that has enabled this kind of life. To me, you know, it's like the old adage. If you want to feed a person for a day, give them a fish. If you want to feed a person for life, teach them how to fish. And that's the thing that the government does so poorly. And because it's much harder, it's much more difficult. We can all print money and throw it away. But to be able to take someone's life and to guide them and to teach them a trade and to compel them that if you wish to receive this check, you're going to have to work a certain number of hours and be productive and show your value to society, that's a much harder thing to do. And governments, quite frankly, are not interested in that kind of business. Anyway, have a
Yes,
wonderful
thank you.
day, everybody. And we'll see you, Bezrat Hashem, next time. Take care.
Thank you.